Welcome to our last information session for the year. It's sponsored and supported by Extreme Networks. Extreme Networks is one of the global Gartner right-hand quadrant, top quadrant solution providers in the networking arena. Dewald is joining us today as well, Dewald Botha from Extreme Networks. Just to introduce Dewald quickly before we talk about other things. Dewald has been with Extreme for a few years, in the industry for many years. He's got a lot of certifications behind him, so he comes with a strong technical background, but he talks from a business perspective, which is awesome. In addition to that, Dewald studied in Pretoria, and I learned recently he's got a degree which he majored in criminology. So I don't know which side of the fence it puts him on, because it might either makes him be a really good guy or really good bad guy. But I guess that's open for debate at a later stage, Dewald. So welcome. Thank you for joining us, Dewald, and thank you to our audience. There's many familiar faces in the audience, or names rather. I can't see faces at the stage, but names. And we've dealt with you over the years, and we appreciate the time you've given us. Like I said, who can believe it's already the 9th of December? That the year has flown so fast. It's been an eventful year for everybody on this planet, etc. But we have come through it, and I think are stronger for it as a country, as an individual, and as families. So yeah, so let's give Dale the floor in a minute, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the transformation of the network. Now, we all think about digital transformation. We think of various aspects, your workforce. We think about your digital workflow. We think about your infrastructure environment, etc. But often we forget about the network, that we can't transform as a business if we don't transform all parts of the business. It needs to be a total move or a total change in an organization, right down to culture to some extent as well, or to a large extent perhaps. But having said that, Dewald's going to talk to us a little bit about the network. The way we're going to do the presentation today is Dewald really has a couple of slides only. I like the way he does his slides. It's very graphical. It's not hordes and hordes of text. And then we're going to open up to a panel discussion between the two of us. And we invite the audience at that stage, if you have questions, to either post them in the chat or bring them to the panel discussion and partake, and either contribute to ask questions or just give illustrations of your experience along the way. It's always nice to hear from our audience as well. So Dewald, if I can hand over to you, please, if you can kick off your presentation. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Faraz. So you should be seeing my screen at the moment.
Got it.
Just let me know if you don't. Cool. Perfect. Alrighty. So first of all, thank you for letting me talk to you guys today. And obviously, thanks to First Tech and Faraz for putting all this together. It really means a lot to me. So before we dive any deeper, let me start by setting the stage and the reason for us being here today. It really is not about the products or even about making profits. It really all starts with a fundamental driver, a core belief. It's a belief that connectivity is fundamental to a better human experience. That when we are connected, we can learn, we can create, and obviously we can grow. So over the last 5 years, there has been a dramatic shift from buying relatively undifferentiated goods or products to rather focusing on the associated experience. 3 out of 4 people between the ages of 24 and 39 would choose to spend money on a desirable experience rather than desirable goods. So customer experience is the currency of today's businesses. Now, customer experience is a very, very broad topic. It includes how a customer consumes a product, uses a product, and even receives support on these products. And where digital transformation comes in is when a business shifts their focus from selling products to finding and addressing their customers' needs. DX, or digital transformation for the sake of simplicity, has been around for quite some time. But with the evolution of technology, we can see this shift all around us. I can, for example, arrange, pay, and check in to my flight to Cape Town from my phone. Arrange a pickup from the airport with Uber, where they will take me to an apartment that I hired through Airbnb. And when I get hungry while I'm enjoying the latest episode of my favorite show on Netflix, Uber will deliver me some snacks. But where would Uber, Airbnb, or Netflix be without mobile apps and high-speed connectivity. The network is the backbone for digital transformation. And as companies have started their DX journeys, we have seen many processes and functions become more digital and move ultimately to the cloud, from computational power to even storage. Being digitally agile in an uncertain world is critical to success. Now, many companies are integrating IT with business functions to drive agility and responsiveness to change. And now the focus has shifted to the infrastructure, as in many cases, it is the legacy network that is holding you back from accelerating your transformation journey. And no DX story can be successful without looking at the network. The next 5 years are going to dramatically change the networking landscape. We are expecting 7.4 billion mobile users in the next 5 years, generating 463 exabytes of data each day. And to give you an idea of how much data that actually is, we're talking about 1 billion gigabytes per exabyte. And with 3/4 of all of these devices connecting over the wireless, there's no way that legacy networking will survive. And that's basically what we're here to discuss. We're going to look at some of the key drivers for digital transformation today, as well as look at some of the essential building blocks that businesses should be looking at for their DX journey. I will also highlight some obvious benefits or key benefits, and we'll look at some of the opportunities that are getting a lot of attention in this space as well. And obviously, as Faraz already said, we will have a discussion and Q&A afterwards. But if you need any additional information that you might need after this call, please reach out to the account team at First Tech or to myself at any time. We are happy to help you guys out. So let's jump in. IoT has come out of the shadows and is becoming far more integral to businesses and consumers. From smart cities to AI in your fridge, the evolution of technology has enabled us to gain access to greater technology at significantly lower prices. With online shopping, cashless payment systems, and on-demand digital services, the convenience of these and other services has radically changed our behavior, but coupled to that has been a major shift in our expectations. It is safe to say that our expectations are higher today than ever before, and major investments are going into edge-based services, from security to real-time data. In actual fact, 96% of digital transformation leaders say that their ability to collect, analyze, and act on real-time data has made it easier for them to adapt and obviously to survive. You know, we are expecting 22 billion IoT devices by 2025, with as many as 75 billion devices in general just being connected to the internet. So automation becomes obvious, because if there's any slip up in code or config changes or causing downtime, you can be sure that, you know, consumers will not be happy, and that could cost us not only millions, but in some cases might even cost us the business itself. And with IoT becoming more and more integrated with business functions and enabling the business services, automation doesn't just help us to remove human error, it also frees up time by removing all the burdensome administrative work, thereby increasing operational efficiency and enhancing human potential by enabling IT to focus on strategic ideas and innovation for and with the business. And the most recent and obvious driver for DX is, of course, the worldwide epidemic from COVID. This has been a major, major disruptor. CEOs from Microsoft and Dell, when asked in April this year, indicated that they saw 2 years of planned transformation being accelerated into the first 2 months of the quarter due to COVID. 80% of surveyed businesses are busy reinventing themselves, and 1 in 3 companies believe that they won't survive the next couple of years if they don't become more agile and responses to changes around them in their market and their staff. And at the center for most of this is the actual network. And so having an agile, scalable IT environment that provides for contingencies is the focus. So we saw that many companies that had aging or rigid infrastructure absolutely struggle when South Africa and the rest of the world went into lockdown, and many of us had to start working from home. So there's no doubt that working from home has changed cybersecurity needs and demands for most of us. And while many of us, some of us obviously being techie backgrounds and we tend to travel often, we're used to dialing in through a VPN. But in most cases, general staff from your call center agents to finance departments, HR, and even business operations staff are likely not used to downloading and installing VPN clients or endpoint security and so on. And this in turn has generated more work and more challenges, not only for IT, but for businesses themselves. Visibility, management, and security of work from home staff has become a major concern, but also, interestingly enough, a huge driver for innovative ideas and agile infrastructure. So let's look at some of the key essentials that we as businesses should definitely be looking at when we are on our DX or our digital transformation journey. Through the last 4 years of DX surveys, the third biggest barrier that has been listed, or the barrier to digital transformation that other companies have answered, has been the absolute inability to extract valuable insights from data. So it is imperative that we get real-time data, and this is where the network edge has been critical in playing a part for business success and business strategies. So at Extreme, every switch and access point across the entire network is a collection point for rich, valuable data. With integrated application engines, you can have data on who the users are, what devices they are using, when they are connecting, and even what applications they are using. And by leveraging location services that are built into access points, you can see where customers or devices are and how much data they're actually consuming. And of course, storing this data is just as important. And with Extreme Cloud IQ, it's a single pane of glass cloud-based management system. We offer unlimited historical data for monitoring and reporting usage. So having real-time data gives us the ability to craft better services, better solutions, or look at new experiences for our customers because it is relevant information today. Just as important as this information is, it is just as important to secure the data. The biggest investments today in digital transformation is in security and privacy. Interestingly enough, these investments are on infrastructure security and end user devices, because as more data is converted into actionable intelligence and more systems are integrated and connected, the network edge has become a major area of attack. In South Africa, businesses lost just over $3 million due to data breaches in 2019, with just over half of the root causes being due to malicious attacks from hackers and, of course, ransomware. We have spent millions and millions of rands on firewalls and perimeter security, which, do not ever misunderstand me, that is very important. But what is very interesting, however, is that 70% of successful breaches start on endpoint devices. And as from July this year, the Protection of Personal Information Act has become officially enforceable. So businesses in South Africa are legally obligated to protect their customer and employee information. Zeus Caravella, who's a leading digital transformation and principal IT analyst in the industry, lists intrinsic security as one of the top 5 priorities for businesses to succeed. So intrinsic security, to give you an idea of what it actually is, it's pretty simple. It is security that's tightly integrated with the network itself instead of being a complex overlay. So examples of this would be network access control. Network access control, or a NAC, can identify the who, what, where, and when of devices on the network, and it can then control access to the network edge based on those variables. And with Extreme Fabric Connect, the network layer itself acts as a security layer where end user traffic from the edge is encrypted and then tunneled from end to end, creating what we call a stealth network layer. And Extreme Cloud IQ, as a unified end-to-end cloud management platform, what is interesting, as a network or cloud-based network management platform, it is the only management platform in the world that is ISO 27001 certified, which means that it complies with privacy laws and requirements, as we've seen in Europe with GDPR, and as we are going to be seeing with us with the PIPA Act. So it has become huge importance to start securing our data, encrypting it, and giving that ability to obviously manage data more effectively. A major second hurdle in data collection is that it becomes obviously very overwhelming and it becomes too much. We are collecting data from all points in the network, and now we're receiving tons and tons and tons of information. So therefore, showing the data in an easy to use format with reporting capabilities is absolutely crucial. We have recently seen a much bigger emphasis on the integration of AI and machine learning to help us to analyze data patterns and provide insights into not only trends, but also some interesting use cases, device behaviors, and obviously from this we can glean what are some potential gaps in our solutions or our services. Now, data security and analysis is nothing if we don't do something with it. So through actionable insights gained from our data analysis, we can create better customer experience. We can automate different parts of the operations to streamline service delivery or even provide new services. If we take Amazon as an example, most of us will consider Amazon as a major global retailer. But what is actually interesting is their own digital transformation journey. When they were developing the back-end systems, applications, payment, and storage components for their online retail service, they figured out that they can take this model and sell it to other enterprises and retailers and offer it as a service. So we know it today as FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon. It's a service that is hosted in AWS, and entrepreneurs or small business owners can then sign up to this service, and Amazon can provide a full retail model experience from inventory to payment, even to delivery, while the business focuses only on the products or on the services they are providing. So Amazon gained insights from different data points. Now, these are obvious data points that we see all over the world: market research, consumer engagement, but also customer data. And what they did is, in their DX journey, is they found and addressed a core need for entrepreneurs and sparked off that entirely new market for them. And this is when we start talking about the benefits. So by transforming IT infrastructure, we can gain incredible insights into customer and employee experiences. And these insights can lead to new opportunities, even within our current business offerings, just like we just talked about when it comes to Amazon. But we're seeing this locally in South Africa as well. A good example is Checkers with 6060, where they are actually having a delivery service linked into their retail experience. Very interesting if you ask me. We know that consumers today are valuing the exchange of their experience more than the product itself, and that a positive experience leads not only to customer but also to brand loyalty. And this is also an interesting thing when we start talking about remote work, and our employees. So success in digital transformation is often predicated on network transformation. Traditional network architecture cannot scale and usually requires a lot of constant attention. So automation at the network layer is a key component of transformation, as it removes time-consuming tasks like we already spoke about, but it also increases operational efficiency. When we talk about the autonomous network, where networks are becoming, self-learning and self-healing, and there's a lot more intelligence in them, the autonomous network itself decreases risks associated with human error, as well as decreases downtime required for change windows, as changes, instead of being done at the core of the network, are now only being done at the edge of the network. And of course, by being able to manage and extract information from all the data points in the business, and with anytime, anywhere access to the entire organization's network and security management, means we can dramatically increase business agility and reach more customers to extend the business across the globe. And obviously from benefits, let's start looking at some of the opportunities across the industry that are opening up due to digital transformation. The first obvious opportunity is the remote workforce. Being able to provide a remote desktop experience with voice over IP telephone extension in your home, secure printing in your home, and even extend the corporate SSID has become not only a priority, but a top talking point and decision-making factor for many organizations, not only in South Africa, but globally. And with remote access points, this becomes a reality, because the access points that we can provide obviously have got 4 integrated Ethernet ports. So we can start tunneling data from that Ethernet port while still providing user identity and security services directly from corporate into the house. And of course, if we start to look at these kind of remote sites, not only houses and homes, but what about pop-up shops or sites, temporary services that you might want to extend for a small period of time? We'll still need to encrypt the data and provide backup connectivity through multiple WAN connections. So this is where SD-WAN, or in my case, more specifically, SD branches, become a major conversation starter for businesses. SD branch routers that also have integrated wireless become an entire network service in a box. So from user roles based on security profiles to Wi-Fi connectivity and application-aware policies, the remote workforce will see the most investment, as it is something that will, in some form or manner, be here for a considerably long time. Another very interesting buzzword is the touchless economy. In the retail world, we have seen ESLs, or electronic shelf labeling, become increasingly popular. Even here locally, there are a few retailers that are making use of this technology. The key benefit here is that we can increase or decrease prices across all the shops almost instantaneously. I'm gonna get a little bit of feedback there. Thanks. But like I said, being able to change prices on products practically instantaneously, that gives us the ability to remove huge risks associated with lost revenue from human error, or obviously the time to change or the change windows associated with pricing updates. And in the restaurants, I'm pretty sure that most of us have seen this trend, having QR code-based menus. From my phone, I can bring up the menu. In some places, I can even order from my phone. And with services like Zapper and SnapScan, I can have a cashless and cardless payment experience. The fundamental part of this touchless economy is wireless connectivity. ESLs, and obviously all of us going to restaurants or businesses or anything to engage in that kind of services, we need to have pretty good wireless connectivity. But more importantly, we need to have wireless that is fast, wireless that is secure, and very importantly, wireless that is reliable. So that is a paramount building block to the touchless economy as we move forward. Interestingly, on the next topic for location services, when I went to the Dubai Mall 2 years ago for the first time, I was absolutely blown away. Not only because it is one of the largest malls in the world, but also because of how they were using wireless location services. Built into most next-gen access points, we've got what we call a BLE radio. In other terms, normally speaking, it's a Bluetooth radio. And that enables some pretty awesome opportunities. And we have seen some pretty interesting investments into wayfinding as a value-added customer experience. For example, I could bring up the mall's app, get free Wi-Fi, and be provided with a Google Maps experience to find any shop I wanted with real-time navigation. But this is not the only use case. Using location services to track assets has become increasingly popular. And customer tracking in expos has helped marketing, sales, and design teams rebuild the layout and booth fees for the next year's expos, because they can track where people are going and what booths are popular where there's lots of people or devices associated. And a huge opportunity has emerged because of COVID in wireless locationing. We all know that social distancing is very, very important. And by leveraging location services and zone-based awareness with wireless, we are able to set up secure areas and receive alerts when too many people are in a specific area. This is something that will help us to stop the spread of the virus while still being able to attend schools, colleges, or universities. And lastly, with the network being critical in most organizations' transformation and digital transformation journeys, enterprise automation and security is an important opportunity, but also a huge driver. Extreme Fabric Connect architecture is a revolution in the way that networks are built. Instead of relying on traditional stacks and overlays of technology, we are able to provide an automated network that self-heals from link breaks, that learns the shortest paths between two endpoints, and delivers intrinsic security, all from the switch itself. There's no additional controllers or orchestrators or software overlays. Fabric Connect, in my opinion, is the next step and evolution in networking. And of course, to tie this all together, we've got Extreme Cloud IQ. It is the industry's most advanced network management platform built on 4th generation architecture that is able to integrate AI and machine learning and deliver practically 100% uptime with microservices-based architecture. And with that, I would like just to hand it over back to Faraz for the Q&A and the paneling. But thank you for having me talk a little bit.
Hey, Dewald, thank you very much. I think that was good. It's a nice overview, very, very high level. We didn't want to go techie with all, and the audience is diverse, so that's good. Having said that, before we say anything else, I want to open up to the audience to see if there's any questions, maybe specific to the slides that were shared. Has anyone got any questions or just input or thoughts? Feel free to turn on your mic and share that. Or post it in a text chat window if you're a little bit camera shy. Okay, it doesn't look like anybody's ready, but that's okay, guys. We're still here. We promised a short deck and then a discussion. So a couple of things that Dewald and I have been talking about over the last couple of days, and specifically, obviously, around the network and transformation, etc. And Dewald shared a interesting document with me from Tech Republic. It's one of the online publications I track or blogs I read, and it refers to the 7 networking predictions for 2020. I mean, it sounds like we're at the end of 2020, but I mean, it's a strategy, right? Not a point in time from an implementation point of view, and it touches on a lot of interesting things, very relevant to all of us as well. We will share that with you when we send out an email back to you after the event. But it touches a lot of important things there, Dewald. I mean, we talk about network automation, for example, and we've seen this as customers are growing. And you spoke about AI and machine learning. And it's one thing being able to see things on a dashboard or a dial, It's another thing being able to respond, and everything is 24/7 now in terms of security threats or users working. Even we've seen that, especially with the work from home changes. People are now logging in very early, sometimes working very late because they've got to juggle things around. They've got kids at home, they've got to teach, and so that whole demand on the company's infrastructure has shifted. I mean, the 8x5 job, on a concept, it's gone a long time ago, but I think it's been those parameters have been pushed a lot further now, in terms of the way people work. So AI talks back to things and decisions being made by the environment or the system that are automated, so that you're not caught surprised the next morning when you come and log in as an admin into your network, because you can't sit 24/7 by a screen. I mean, obviously, and watch things, or even just monitor your email 24/7. But yeah, so that article talks about the automation, talks about AI, talks about the Wi-Fi 6, and I want to come back to Wi-Fi 6 because that's an interesting topic. There's a lot of that going around in the news. Talks about 5G. There's a lot of that going around in the news. I mean, I've just heard recently there's a new store. I don't want to punt any of the networks, but there's a new store opened up in Tiger Valley in the Cape, which is got a flagship 5G store. They talk about the change in web browser behavior, content, and there's a lot of conversations in the news at the moment in terms of the browser companies, the search companies monopolizing your data. And I mean, that's a completely different discussion and probably not for today. It talks about the return of the groupware suite and those your desktop applications, and talks about edge computing. And I think edge computing is just as relevant in terms of changes as offices are decentralizing because of people. I mean, a year ago, some people only had a head office or 2-3 offices perhaps, and now suddenly you've got these hundreds of offices for your employees everywhere from home, right? So that has changed. So Dewald, my first question to you perhaps would be around Wi-Fi 6 and 5G. I mean, that's a lot in the news at the moment, right? And perhaps we start with Wi-Fi 6. Just what does it mean for business around Wi-Fi 6? And then we tag it back to where does 5G fit into this?
Cool. So, with the influx of all these mobile devices and, as we look at IoT in general becoming more and more integrated into our daily lives, with smart TVs, smart washing machines, like all these things are IoT devices. Wireless has had many, many challenges. The biggest one was obviously to provide fast access. And in many cases, what we found with wireless going back not only to businesses, but also in homes, is that we had either too many devices or users connecting in one single area. So wireless planning and wireless service delivery has always been a bit of a challenge over the last couple of years. So the biggest technology jump and advancement for wireless in general has been Wi-Fi 6, the AX architecture. What it does is it changes the game quite significantly. It allows for multiple devices to simultaneously send and receive data, meaning we can have several more users connected to a single access point. And most importantly, it utilizes both bands. So it's 2.4 and 5G, where in the past we only saw big developments with 802N only being on 2.4 with a bit of AC on 5 and now AX. But what Wi-Fi 6 does, it enables this new way of managing devices and clients connecting to the network on both bands. So this opens the conversation to have wireless-only networks. If we start looking at coffee shops, the easy example. But if we start looking at smaller businesses and small enterprises, to have the ability to have a wireless-only office is now a reality, because we're finally able to provide a similar, if not a better experience than what we would have done on traditional local area networks. So for content service delivery, this will also be a huge game changer. Because, as I said, we can change into wireless-only offices or something like that. It's usually the costs associated with all the network layout, all the clever engineers, all these things, that will be significantly reduced. But at the same time, with security built into the access points as well as the application engines, we can suddenly see a lot more information and gain even more valuable insights from that. So with 5G, it's very similar to Wi-Fi 6. If I have to look at the both of them, I would say Wi-Fi 6 is something that is inside the office And 5G is outside the office. We're talking about smart cities, connecting traffic lights, connecting CCTV cameras across an entire smart city, and even connecting smart cars on the highways and these things. So that's what 5G is going to do for us alongside with Wi-Fi 6. So for South Africa, what I hope to see is a giant shift into the digital age, where we'll have significant opportunities, not only for the economy itself, but also for our quality of life.
Okay, that's definitely very interesting. I mean, it's a leap in technology, and it talks towards the next generation of communications. Really, what you're talking about is high density of devices. It talks to the large consumption of video content today, which we've seen in the last year. I mean, just about everything is video now. People who were resistant to using video for meetings, for example, in the past, suddenly is into video, right? And I mean, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I think it's positive. So from that perspective, it's relevant. So video has definitely changed things. From an audience perspective, any questions for Dewald, perhaps for myself around that in terms of what we're seeing? So while if anybody wants to put up their hand, they're welcome to. But again, to support that is I'm in a second gen of notebook now. Well, my second notebook in the last 4 years, which has got no network port on it, no UTP port, nothing to plug in, no cable, and that's the trend, right? So the cable is going away. And that has got both pros and cons. I mean, the pro is you don't have to cable your offices anymore because you're not going to be dependent on that. On the other hand, you need to be able to cater for those users who are now not only coming to work with a notebook that's now connected via the Wi-Fi. I need a device connection for my mobile phone, for my tablet, maybe. You know, we maybe have a smart board that's Wi-Fi connected, and so this thing is growing, right? And that's what you're talking about, supporting that density of devices. I see somebody put their hand up, a gentleman named Gerard. We'll come back to you now. And I also just want to differentiate between the Wi-Fi 6, which supports the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz frequency, and that is also called a 5G, being gigahertz, but sometimes confused with the cellular 5G. You know, I mean, people get confused a little bit sometimes, and 5G is obviously the public network, and if I can put it that way, from a cellular provider, which I think is a massive game changer for the world. But that's perhaps a discussion for later again. So somebody had a question there. If I can ask you to please unmute your mic and go ahead and ask us.
Morning, gents. Alan O'Connor. I'm currently assisting traffic with a project. So this is probably looking into the future also a little bit, but with our connectivity and our bandwidth capability increasing significantly, as well as the capability to store a lot more data in smaller spaces, we're going to have future security challenges where suddenly you can download enormous secure content or sensitive content onto devices in your pocket. So there's a new layer of security that we'll have to consider and look at around this as well.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I mean, the whole ability to do anything, anywhere, anytime is impacting that. And so security, I mean, is a massive conversation on its own, right? And I mean, we're spending a lot of time at that at the moment. There isn't a single meeting that doesn't discuss security today. And it's in various forms, be it on the network, be it on the device, be it on the firewall, and be it even to the home users. And I think later on, maybe Dewald and I can touch on that a little bit, because the home user has changed the dynamic in terms of the way content is being consumed. But that's very relevant, Alan. Thank you for that feedback. Any other questions? So Dewald, I wanted to ask you about the cloud, right? I mean, everybody's got this perception, and it's not only a perception, it's a reality as well, that we're going cloud, right? The expectations maybe are sometimes unrealistic, and the reason why I say that is that the FD goes, guys, got to go cloud. And IT goes, well, it's not that easy. Well, we're going to save money, guys. We've got to go cloud. In the hybrid world, I think we've established that, and even large vendor like a Microsoft has come out in the last year and saying the world will be hybrid. In the previous years, they've always said it will be Microsoft, actually, right? Now they're saying it will be hybrid, and we're seeing that evolution happening slowly in terms of the hybrid architectures, etc. So the question that comes to mind for me is that how important is my network then? If I'm going to be living out of the cloud, even in some form or another, and will change over the next few years, how important is my network? And perhaps you can give us just some thoughts around that.
Cool. Well, what is interesting and something that COVID has absolutely shown us is that we need to be ready for anything. With most people going into this hybrid work mode, some days I'm working from the home, some days I'm working from the office. We've seen definitely a major shift in the workforce itself and how they are, needing to connect and to consume not only data in home, but also for the corporate needs. So with people, changing the way they go to the office, either by going on shifts or by stacking meetings, something that I will most likely be doing, the biggest challenge now falls on IT, because IT needs to be prepared for the situation where the office some days will be relatively empty, but other days will be completely chock and block full. So what it really comes down when we start talking about what's the need for digital transformation and networking if things are going to be changing so much, it really comes down to scalability and automation, and that then leads into the remote workforce and securing them on their edges. But that's maybe a bit later. But for now, the infrastructure, as we look at it today, tends to be very rigid. So it can't really move a lot. It can't be changed easily. So if I need to make some changes on a network switch, I need to go to the switch, make the changes. Or, if I'm lucky enough to have some kind of overview management platform, I can do the same thing, but I have to do stuff. When we start looking at the autonomous network and the benefits in that is that the network itself stays relatively untouched depending for the edge, because now I've got this intelligence on the edge where the edge devices are connected. I challenge who you are, and they're brought onto the network. So it's about scalability and being agile so that we're not blocking the staff that comes to the office or blocking what they need to do, but rather to support the enterprise access as it shifts through all of its different motions.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, you and I joked about that earlier when I said that I haven't done hardcore engineering for a long time. I mean, in the old days, to map a VLAN to a port, right? And then if you need to change something, you need to go back to the physical port. So if that port was in another building or during lockdown, I can't get to the building perhaps. How do I accommodate that? So yeah, definitely a change there. If I can ask the audience perhaps a question. I mean, when we started conversing, digital transformation of the network wasn't an obvious thought to me, even though after we chatted, it makes sense. Perhaps I can ask the audience by show of hands, if you guys have thought, just if you don't want to say anything, just click your hands up, just to say that you've actually thought of DX and the network. I mean, that has been something that you guys have thought about in your future in terms of planning. I think everybody's watching Netflix on the side. No, I'm just joking, guys. So there's a couple of hands that went up there. So yeah. So I mean, it's an important item in terms of that digital transformation, I think, and we forget about it. I'll talk about IoT a little bit, right? And again, I'd like to ask the audience, and just checking if you guys are all still awake. Actually, no, just teasing about that. But I want to check with you guys if who's got IoT devices at home. If you can just put your hand up, or at the office for that matter. There's a couple of hands that flash there. Oh, there's more hands. That's awesome. Okay, so IoT has crept into our life slowly but surely, and I mean, I'm passionate about it. As a matter of fact, from a hobby perspective, that's where I'm putting a little bit of energy in at the moment. Being a tech guy, I love it, and I think it's changing the way we think, the way we work. This automation. Dewald confessed yesterday to having, I think, a washing. Or was it your friend, or was it your washing machine?
It was a colleague of mine.
Okay, who's got a IoT-enabled washing machine and firmware upgrade busted the ROM or whatever it is, and the machine stopped working. So I guess that's the curse of today's modern days. But having said about that, it's slowly these devices have crept into our lives, and many of us don't even realize it. And the first IoT device that's actually living with us today is this device here, the mobile phone. And we don't even think about it, but it's actually an IoT device. Before it was just a phone. And in the last 10 years, it's been enabled around mobility and tracking, and then the next one is our smartwatches, right? Because that's an IoT device as well. And even though it doesn't have an IP address per se, but it talks to your phone, it's got an IP address, right? And some of them have got Bluetooth, some of them have got near field chips, and those are all connectivity points for us in business or in personal. And from an IT perspective, I mean, I've enabled my coffee machine to be, because I'm passionate about coffee as well, enabled my coffee machine to be manageable from remote. As a matter of fact, I get the notification now when somebody turns the coffee machine on and off at home to my mobile phone to that extent. And that's not the point of it. The point is just to get my coffee to brew before I'm out of bed. And I power manage my fridges and those kind of little things. And that's just stuff I'm passionate about. But having said that, this IoT thing has been growing and growing and growing, and it's only going to get more exciting. Whether we like it or not, there's going to come a time when you buy a fridge, it's going to come with IoT connected UTP port or wireless. And then you're going to end up with your microwave. And I've already mentioned coffee machines, which is a big trend in the US, by the way, and other things apart from our phones and our watches. So how are we going to manage it? But before you answer me, there's a question there. Let me have a look at it quickly. And before you respond to me, let's see what the question is. Ilsa raised something. Hi, Ilsa. At this stage, if my internet is not working, Alexa cannot switch on my lights. You are so right about it, Ilsa. So home automation is a problem when it's connected to the cloud, right? And that's a huge challenge. And obviously, Alexa needs to talk to the cloud. I mean, that's very relevant, be it Google Assistant or Alexa. So personally, I'm a Google Assistant kind of guy, just letting you know, Ilsa. But I've got some Amazon stuff as well as I'm playing with it. So home automation is also changing and evolving. Obviously, if you want to search for something and you ask Alexa, it needs to have access to their search engine, the AI engine, right? But if you want to do something locally, your home automation needs to be within your home office. So what I'm doing is not just sidetracking. Is I'm in the process of migrating my home automation onto an internal device, being a Raspberry Pi actually, and that will run my home automation and all of it. So now I've got to reflash my devices so that they are talking locally and not dependent on the cloud. And there's two reasons for that, Ilsa, and to the audience. It's that number one is security concerns, and we're going to talk more about security. I'm going to ask Dewald about that because the world can see my IoT devices, right? Because it's got an IP address. That's number one, and it's connected to the cloud. Number two, which means somebody's collecting my metadata. Right now, today, somebody knows when my coffee machine goes on and off. Not very relevant, but they also know when I go sleep and when other things happen, etc. So I'm a little bit concerned about that for the long term. And then thirdly is that what happens when connectivity is down for some reason. Suddenly I can't switch on lights anymore, like you said. And so how do we work around that? And in this instant, from a security point of view and a local management point of view, I'm bringing IoT in-house so that I can manage it myself and know that my metadata, my biometrics, whatever's being collected, is staying with me and not with anybody else. So that was a cool point actually that you raised there. It's interesting. So Dewald, I mean, how are we going to cope in this world with IoT? I mean, I read an article just last night, and I've got it open on the side here, and it talks about vulnerabilities. There were 33 vulnerabilities found amongst 150 IoT and router vendors, and we see that all the time now in the news. This is nothing new. That vendor X, there's a vulnerability in a router, and a router is a critical item, right? Because once you're in there, the entire network is toast, right? So yeah, how are we gonna manage this thing? Because now to compound that is not only will my home get breached, but I'm working from home. My home device is connected to my network, and I'm connected to the office via VPN. How are we gonna manage this world?
It's a very interesting question. I can address it in two ways. I'll talk about the second one, which I'm a lot more passionate about myself because I think it's really interesting architecture. But what has been happening with IoT, just in general speaking, is that they've kind of tried to evolve their platform. Because what we find, and this is actually interesting, where networking is absolutely leading the way, we've got the control plane, data plane, and management plane of access points completely separated, where in the old days they were all put together. And that's what we find with IoT today. For the IoT device to even work, it needs to dial into the cloud and receive anything from the cloud. So the control and data plane are still tied into that. So with access points, and this has been for a couple of years now, they've been able to separate, and there's a couple of vendors, obviously including us, that are doing this. So when my access points connect to the cloud, it's only for management or config changes, or to send some encrypted analytics information. But the data and control plane stays on premises. So even if I lose connectivity to the cloud or to the internet with my cloud managed APs or switches, they all keep on working. Obviously, it's only the resources in the cloud that will not be reachable, but everything else keeps on going. So that's the first thing when you talk about IoT and that kind of separation of control plane. That very interesting stuff. The other one, last year, Gartner came out and they defined something that I think is really, really cool. It's called SASE. It's called the Secure Access Service Edge. And what it's about shifting the focus to the identity of the user or the device, not necessarily just the data center or the network itself. So what it does is it combines SD-WAN and security and allows companies to apply secure access policies to the user itself, no matter where they are connecting from. So basically, and this is something that we did a couple of years ago, it's a network policy or a security policy that follows you all around. So the fundamental requirement for something like this is to have that software-defined network. And that leads back into what I spoke about IoT. A software-defined network is when the data plane, control plane, and management plane are separated. Because then we can address the control plane and management plane separately with our software, like the cloud management platforms, or with other vendors, it'll be an orchestrator sitting on the network itself, where we can give it instructions and it will propagate change. So there's a couple of ways to achieve security with homes and remote access for remote offices. And the easiest way to do this is, like I said, with SD-LAN or SD-WAN stuff. But more importantly, it's SD-LAN enabled equipment. In most cases, this will be access points or small home-based SD-based routers, which is able to then manage not only the connectivity, but also extend security policies into the home and also interrogate and identify who's connecting, what's a security policy. And this conversation gets very interesting. But at the end of the day, with SD-LAN or SD architecture in general, it is about that security, that identifying the who and the what and the where, and being able to manage this effectively. So in the old days, we had management that we had to, physically interact with and change the switch, like you said earlier, change the switch in the next building, et cetera, et cetera. But with cloud-based management, we can now have a management plane that manages our home offices, the remote offices, etc., from all over the world in a single place. And because it's software-defined architecture, if I make a change, I can actually roll that change out to all the devices, being zero-day exploits or a new security policy or whatever the case is. So that's kind of where that architecture really fits in, and it's gaining huge popularity in the industry at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense, right? I mean, and part of that conversation is obviously firewalls, right? And I mean, this is not a firewall conversation, but firewall it's an interesting conversation as well, because today it's a very, very critical part of the environment. Always been, but it's highlighted its place, I think, in the last couple of years, and not just remote access. It's the whole full thing else goes that. So there's a challenge here, because home users, before it was easy. We had 2 offices, 4 offices, 6 offices, 10 offices. They all had firewalls, right? We'd create secure tunnels, whatever between them. Remote users were random, and they'd have access to it via login via VPN. Now we suddenly have all the users working from home. Not everybody's got a firewall. Nobody's got a firewall dome, actually. It's on their router, right? Which is very fundamental, very basics. And not everybody works through VPN either, because it's limiting in a lot of ways, because of the way the traffic behaves. So you've touched on something there early on about talking edge devices and SD-WAN and various things. Now, SD-WAN is an awesome technology because it optimizes the public infrastructure, your internet, basically your World Wide Web, as opposed to proprietary MPLS communication layers, which changes the cost dynamic, the availability of service dynamic, and just change the entire game. For those of you who haven't looked at that yet, it's a very important conversation to have. But how are we going to address that from a home user perspective, from an APU or a device?
Right on. So SD-WAN as architecture has actually walked a very interesting path. When it started out, it was aimed at bigger companies with MPLS networks, right? That's how we all entered the market. SD-WAN is the way, because we can have not only MPLS, but we can also have public internet and even a small, 3G or LTE dongle, stick it into this device. It will build tunnels to the HQ. And it is also application aware, user aware, and device aware. So I can create security policies that are promulgated down to the edge. So that's where SD-WAN really started, more of an enterprise thing. But with all the changes, a year ago, if you came to us and you said, I want to build a 100% remote workforce, we would have said, no problem, give me, $5 or $10 million and a year or two, and I will be able to do it. But what has happened is there's been a huge shift in this remote security, and obviously our home-based employees were in the work. So what a lot of companies, and obviously I say us included, what we've done is we've kind of put together these solutions that are built on that SASE kind of concept, that SASE architecture. So the access points are small home-based little access points. I have one here somewhere, but it's called an atom. So the atom is literally, you plug it into the wall and you plug it into a cable and it goes, because it doesn't need PoE to function. And from this device, it is not only application aware with a layer 2 to layer 7 firewall built into it, but it also is user aware and software defined. So I can now, for example, we're sitting here, I'm in my home office, you might be in your home, many of us are now sitting in a home office, and I can then prioritize specific traffic, and it's application aware. So I can say, cool, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all these Office 365 applications, I can see them and I can create a very easy click-through rule to say, prioritize this over the public internet or over an MPLS link because it's got multiple links. And the rest of the stuff during office hours, limited. And because it's, device aware, we can start creating what is effectively a firewall in a box. It becomes a total network solution in a small box, where we've got obviously the firewall that I already spoke about, the user and device awareness. So if something connects on the network and it's doing something that I don't like, it will be like a firewall, just denied in the end. So it's pretty interesting. But look, this is just from a networking perspective. There are obviously so many other ways of approaching this from a software-based point of view to cloud-based management for end devices connecting through an orchestrator. But again, that for me seems really overcomplicated. I like to look at it, being a network guy myself, how do I make it the easiest? How do I make this the simplest possible way? And, there are many vendors out there that have been doing this and are approaching this, but, luckily at Extreme, we are leading the way in this, but it's a small little home-based router that will connect obviously with, the normal internet connectivity through your fiber or your LTE router or whatever, and it will give the entire home that security and visibility.
Okay, that's interesting. This Atom device sounds amazing, but obviously the next question is I think probably obvious is that, so I've got 200 employees, 500 employees, or 500 remote workers, and suddenly I've got 500 devices in the field. I'm changing a configuration in my environment. Do you manage them all remotely, or how do you make sure they're all in sync with your policies?
So this is where like SASE as an architecture, and this is where digital transformation has really been skyrocketed forward. It does boil down to cloud management. Now we've seen this across the entire industry. We've seen this with Cisco, we've seen this at Aruba. Everyone is coming forward saying cloud. Cloud is the future, it's the management platform, and that's predominantly because of the software-defined devices. Because I can now have all my devices, for example, my access points, if I plug it in, it will dial home over an encrypted connection, and dial home is a local data center that's geo data centers. Dial home to the local one, and because I've added it to my management platform that is hosted in the cloud as well, it just dials in and it's there, it's available. And whatever policy, I can predefine a policy for it, it will automatically receive it. So that's zero-touch deployment, which is interesting because then I can have 200 devices sent out to my employees' homes to secure not only the network, but also my corporate data. But more importantly, I can then manage and view all of it from one single pane of glass. And when I create a policy, I can assign all of these devices automatically to say, if you are this model, you must go into this policy. And if you are in this policy, then this is your configuration. So when I make a change, I can then send that change out to everyone practically instantaneously. And that's where the software-defined edge or software-defined networking and cloud really come and join hands together to provide this absolutely next level experience. And to be honest, it is the future. That's where everybody's going. So it's DX in a nutshell, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean that's important, because I don't think this working from home concept is suddenly going to return back to the office. I think it's the working environment is going to remain hybrid. I was in a meeting this morning, and the same conversation came up, is that we as an office or as a team or as a company has always been flexible about it, where we allow people to be remote in the office and obviously at customers, right? And they work in that manner. But now, some of them are in the office randomly, but it's never going to be permanent. Nobody's going to be, and there will be some teams probably that operate more from the office, but the population is going to be that. This becomes a very important thing. Talking about customer experience, and for those of you that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, we've been posting a lot of stuff recently around customer experience, because that's a very important part, is this level of tolerance that people have. So there's two parts to customer experience. One is it's really great and it's awesome and I love it. Then there's, if I have a bad experience, I don't go back, right? And I don't know if this is just a global thing, but there's a certain level of impatience. If something doesn't happen very quickly, I'm just going to move on, and I'm not going to hang around. And I think it's more prevalent in the very young audiences, right? I mean, the moment something doesn't happen, it's like moving on. And I'm going to use a case, an example for that is that we have a very large site. It's an extreme network site in the Western Cape. It's a government. I'm not going to mention the entity's name. And they've got literally thousands of APs deployed for public network access, right? So people that come to their service centers and want to have access to the network, they just kind of jump onto the Wi-Fi and Bob's your uncle, they're going through. And they got a complaint from one of the backhaul networks providers, because they've partnered with the major network providers in this country, and there's a handful of them, really, if we think about tier ones, to backhaul that in terms of donating free network, and they pay for some of it as well, but free, so that I can hop on, and then I can hop on to a Telkom network or a Vodacom network or whatever it might be, but through the organization's APs. And one of the networks complained to this customer to say that they're finding that you're not staying on the network, and they think they're getting a low connectivity rate, meaning that they don't think they're getting the same level of exposure as other networks. They felt they were being biased, in short, right? So compromised in some way, that somebody was tweaking the system to go to vendor X and not Y, and they were vendor Y. Through that experience and using the technologies that comes with an extreme network, the AI engines, the machine learning, and the analytics that sit within it, we were able to drill down to the point where we could provide the information to this network in exactly how much time was spent on the network, how long the users connected, when they disconnected, how long they stayed on the other network, etc., etc. And we could illustrate that the connectivity speeds and experience the users were getting, and this is the link, is that they were providing an inferior service. So somebody would get onto vendor Y's network and actually go, switch me please, and pick another path, and so that they had the preferential speed and connectivity and experience, and that was an illustration of both the user's impatience or wanting the good experience, and the technology behind it supporting the environment to be able to go down to that level and illustrate what's going on. Yeah, we could even do geolocation using the APs, by the way, in terms of where the user was physically geolocated, in terms of, was it a bad AP experience from a distance point of view, or what was it? So yeah, so that was quite a fascinating experience, I would say. But yeah, having said that, I really want to open up to the audience, and we'll wrap up shortly. But before I do, I want to ask if there's anybody else that's got questions out there, either via the chat window. Please feel free to post them or put up your hand, and we're happy to give you the floor and the video screen for a moment or two. And yeah, so before we close off, Dewald, anything else from your side that struck you during this conversation? Maybe that's relevant.
I think, what is interesting is that we did with Ilse as well, saying, I've got this IoT device in my home. When we're talking about IoT coming out of the shadows, it is a reality. We're talking about smart light bulbs, and this is important because if we start thinking about, changing our electricity behavior to save costs, not only electricity, but also save the grid, we need to have smarter offices. And this requires us to have IoT devices, which means against these IoT devices. So the network needs to be able to do that. So there's a lot of, downward spiral or cascading arguments that say, cool, I want this thing to save me money, but it's not going to work in my current network. So there's this constant, thing that the network becomes, because it's too rigid and unchangeable, stops us from progressing into newer tech we want to try out, or saving the business costs through electricity saving and smart light bulbs and all these things, or sensors indoors, or temperature sensors. All these things are IoT devices. So to have this IoT awareness, we need to obviously secure it and have a network that's able to scale to that extent and provide connectivity for all of these extra devices that are coming into the network. So I just wanted to leave that there to say that, digital transformation for the network layer is absolutely paramount, and that's why I say it is the backbone for any DX strategy going forward, whether it's customer experience or just saving the company costs.
Yeah, that's true. We've seen that. I mean, we're busy with a project at the moment for customers in the pharmacological space in terms of the thousands of fridges countrywide, and if somebody leaves a door open, they don't necessarily know. There's a risk of their product going off, expiring, whatever the case might be. And secondly, the power consumption, and then thirdly, damaging the fridge. Because if a fridge overworks, the motor dies, right? And that's phenomenal cost. And then that unit is down. I mean, that service center goes down because they can't function without the fridge. So the knock-on effect is huge. So that project has every single fridge being temperature managed throughout the country to a dashboard with alerts, but every fridge has an IP address. And it's internet facing because you need to access it remotely. So yeah, it makes for interesting conversation, guys. If there's no more questions, I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to Dewald for great conversations. Really nice having you on this forum, and to Extreme Networks for sponsoring it. You are a key partner to us, and we've always enjoyed this relationship for many, many years already, and we will continue with it. And then the audience for taking the time out to sit with us and chat, and for those who posted questions. And Jolene for organizing it. Jolene is on our team. Many of you know her for the last few years already for doing an awesome job on organizing events, and now we're all online, so you don't see Jolene anymore. But she's here in the audience somewhere. It's up to her whether she wants to turn on a video or not, but she's here with us, and thank you, Jolene, as well for that. So yeah, guys, we're literally at the end of the session and end of the year as well. I think some of us are tired and are looking forward to a break, and I just want to ask everybody to be safe, not only on the roads, but from a COVID management perspective as well. It's important we maintain the awareness and the management that I think we as South Africa has been fairly successful with in terms of masks, sanitization, social distancing, apart from the wild rave in Pietermaritzburg somewhere, or in the KZN somewhere. I didn't get an invite to the rave, so I didn't attend. Probably a good thing. No, I think I'm slightly past it. I'd have to get a permission letter from my mother and my wife to attend the rave, I think. But yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, so we just need to be smart about it, and I think we'll be okay. So yeah, if there's no other comments from anybody, then we'll close up. So thanks to Stack for joining us.